I'm Michael Giménez. I'm an assistant professor of English here at Cleveland State and director of the Cleveland State University Poetry Center. It's my pleasure to have with us tonight two fine poets. I will introduce them together, and first, Carmen Giménez Smith will read. Second, Oni Buchanan will read, and after Carmen reads and Oni starts reading, part of Oni's reading will involve a video surprise that I hope you stay for, that I'm excited to see. That's why there's a screen on the board. I wanted to ask you to turn off your cell phones if they're on, and to remind you that there are two more readings after this, but before those two readings, Oni Buchanan, if you like her and you don't dislike classical music, Oni, who is also a pianist, will perform impromptus and fantasies, piano works by Bach, Chopin, Schubert, and Schumann in Drinko Recital Hall in the Music and Communication Center, 2001 Euclid Avenue, and that's tomorrow at 7:30 p.m. On Tuesday, we will have here in this room David Baker and Kevin Proofer reading at 7:30. And then on Thursday, November 19th at 7:30, we'll have the poets Helena Mesa, Matthias Svalina, and Allison Titus, all of whose first books have been published by Cleveland State University. Carmen Giménez Smith is the author of the poetry collection Odalisque in Pieces, University of Arizona Press, 2009, and the chapbook Casanova Variations. Her poetry has appeared in such journals as Boston Review, Colorado Review, Jubilant, and Poetry. She is the publisher of the press Noemi and the editor-in-chief of the literary magazine Puerto del Sol. She holds an MFA from the Iowa Writers Workshop and lives in Las Cruces, New Mexico, where she's an assistant professor of creative writing at New Mexico State University. Oni Buchanan is the author of Spring, published by University of Illinois Press in 2008, which was selected by Mark Doty for the 2007 National Poetry Series. She's also the author of What Animal, published by University of Georgia Press in 2003, selected by Fannie Howe as a winner of the University of Georgia Press Contemporary Poetry Series competition. Oni is, as I mentioned earlier, an acclaimed concert pianist and has released 3 solo piano CDs. She holds an MFA in poetry from the Iowa Writers Workshop and a master's degree in piano performance from the New England Conservatory of Music. She lives in Boston, where she maintains a private piano teaching studio. First, please help me welcome Carmen Giménez Smith.
Thank you so much for coming tonight. Thank you, Rita and Michael, and I'm really glad to be reading with Oni tonight. I'm going to read, first, I'm going to read from 3 books, 2 of them unpublished. I'm only going to read a few poems, though. I'm going to read, first I'm going to read from Odalisque in Pieces, which is the book that just came out. This poem is called So You Know Who We Are. The wisteria and bill collectors colluded to swallow our household whole. So we dismantled it, rivet and splinter, made 2 piles on the lawn. Belongings the quality of lead, belongings the quality of dandruff. The blue stoop, its yellow roses, a peep show each time we cracked the door. My dog-eared book on serial killers, the painting with the wandering eye, stacked in the yard, as we had done a dozen times before. My father insisted that staying was akin to calcifying. He hated geologic permanence buried in heaps under us. He buried his employ instead. My mother sewed nickels into her hem. We children were assigned the task of packing only the most relevant bits into milk crates stolen from the grocery store. The leave-behinds we picked over, a giant jar of buttons, a red satin jumpsuit, a doll with galaxies painted onto her eyes, strands and strands of hair. We wrote our names in tiny letters on the walls of our rooms to put down a trace of our stay. This poem is called Finding the Lark. I'm a lot obsessed with fairy tales, so I was, when I started writing this poem, which actually was right out of graduate school, but it took me several years to write the poem, I wanted to create a new fairy tale, so this is my attempt at creating a new fairy tale. Finding the Lark. 1. Our house of quiet restraint had so few gifts in it. My mother lived quiet as a ring in a velvet box. I wrote a poem about my father turning into a planet, of being that planet's anxious satellite, rising from its orbit into the atmosphere. In the poems, I burned down our modest house. I burned down houses all over town. No one knew me, I thought, but my mother did. She scribbled me a picture where my mouth should have been. She explained longing and offered me salves, furs, cigarettes wrapped in linden leaves. 2. Every morning, a lark came to the front window that framed her. Arson is invention, sang the lark from her perch, pointing to where her silvery heart smoldered. I grew my mouth kissing that window, roiling waters inside, my hunger stretching its feline limbs. I wondered what her gifts were, wondered if the lark was my mother, or if my mother, my mother. Then one morning, the lark disappeared. From my window, I watched for the desperate speck, searched the bushes, searched the table, her perch in the house's veiled attic. The halo of smoke in the sky was dotted with birds, but they weren't the lark. I watched the sky, pushed out of the window to look, my long hair twisted in the wires that connected our house to the distance. A fire chattered. I looked into the lacy face of it. I didn't know where it came from. I wanted it. At first, it seemed to me that it was the truth, burning away. Then, not at all. 3. I slept while my mother measured my hunger. She left cottage cheese in cardboard boxes. She left a note on the door, "Gone, don't wait up." She found the photo I took of the lark. I adorned it with pearls. In it, the lark sings a song I tried to learn from the cleft of her mouth. I once pressed the photo to my face like a mask, but nothing. This my mother took. Sweet, sweet girl of mine. She knew what I wanted all along. 4. My pencils grow sharper, the ink runs full, the cold wind stays at my back, my father becomes a ghost of industry, my mother wraps herself in cloaks at night. Every night she looks in the trees. Sweet, she calls out, searching for the source of smoke. Sweet girl. She becomes a stranger with sticks in her hair. Lark, come home. Lark, find my mother. Now she's the one who needs you. When my mother kisses me, she tastes like soot. This poem is called Eyelash. I wish the preoccupation with diamonds wasn't such a hinge, or that I lived like a starlet's eyeball. I wish I could spout blasphemy quick as motorcycles. I wish for my bloody callback. Wanted, a big fat organism to eat me alive. I wish that everyone in my stomach would stop scratching. I would like to be raised over the crowd in a blanket, pretty please. Will someone write me a proper response? I dream Manhattan gets cheaper, that these things are cheaper. Drugs, daintiness, the little mock dress. I wish for a bit back, 5 or 10 cents worth, a favor, a door, a crumb from the one that got away. I wish I could find what I needed, like you find a 20 in an old coat. I wish I could unravel it all and start it again with new wool flecked silver, to redo each first day. I want to choose right. I want the look and the feel of authenticity. I'm thirsty, hungry, peaked in lust, a cavern of aching yen. I want. It's got a ring to it. I want the ring. called Deja Vu. It happened to me once. Winter came and snow quilted every inch. I stood on the soapbox as I was told and made staggering accusations. The public ignored, so I retreated behind the potted yew. I was waiting for a moment I was supposed to have on a balcony overlooking the giant gridded landscape. The sounds I made underscored what I meant. The potted yew was the face that I wore. It was a metaphor for what could be. The public endured. I put the potted yew behind me. I made staggering an art. That wasn't the truth, though. Winter comes and negates all it covers. It doesn't matter where I stand. The balcony is a floor without walls. The yew is a hurt that shadows. The instance lives beneath us, not just us, everybody. The shadow hurts us. I make sounds like the truth. Fate and theft are involved. I think I told you this before. The floor is a wall that obscures. The yew is a quilt without color. Shadow is a fate you involved. The yew on a balcony negates. I told you this before. I was left undone. It's what I meant underneath everyone. I'm a big Stevens fan, so this is my faux Stevens poem. I wish I were Wallace Stevens poem. It's called Idea in a Ruinous State. Only the flutter of an idea. Only an absolute that throws off the cloak of mooniness to reveal that she never was or never will be. Only a promise to prevail over speech's vault. After all day behind the broad face of memorandum, only the shadow figure in the den. Only a giant fit snug in a matchbox. Only Chancellorette to the skyline twisted around heaven. Only the fugue macaques hum from the orange trees. Carmen, they call out from across the sea. Only the vision that surrounds her with a harmony that tastes of honey or more so. Only her house, a blur that shifts as the earth shifts and is made true only here. Only the invisible post where she writes the encounters with air's lusters. Only the imagined hour with which she's made a fragile craft. I'm gonna read, it's funny because I'm very excited to read from my new work, even though this is my book, but I'm most excited to read from my new work. So I kind of rushed through that part. I feel obligated. I'm going to read from two manuscripts that I've just finished that I'm very excited about. The first manuscript is called Trees Outside the Academy, and I lived in San Francisco, which was really wonderful, but it's also like an addiction. So this collection is kind of like writing about being addicted to something like a city and not wanting to leave, and then also feeling very lonely sometimes in a city because it can be very isolating. Even though it feels like you're doing lots of things, you can be very lonely. And also I think this is about the early 21st century. This is called For About 5 Minutes in the Aughts. I put up notice on the internet where misspellers wrote the most compelling notes. They wore industrial eyeglasses and ironic t-shirts and trucker hats and often forgot their wallets. One taught me about science fiction porn while we lay on his silk leopard print sheets. After that, a Nugent lookalike, then a map maker in Alaska, and that old-timey going nowhere correspondence that I thought I'd tell our kids over Thanksgiving in the new 50s. This concurrent with a cameo by a figure in my personal history who told me I looked a lot smaller since the 90s. We watched films that made me feel old because of choice feminism contradictions. And I wrote poems about the city's howling lunatics in dialect compost of technology and snark. Then. Met a lunatic on Craigslist and concerned about starts, I stuffed his inbox with amendments and bloated metonymy. This happened for months. This happened while I healed from pneumonia, from broken bones, from agoraphobia. Drinking beer gave me a panic, so whiskey. Divorce, ephemera, safe doors, and pre-midlife. I collected fancy pens. And yeah, I'm working on an article about anime and Marxism. Pills made me shaky, but I filled myself with pills because they made me shaky. Attended .com parties, thrown by post-Stanford nerds in tucked-in shirts. What Adam's apples? They gave away Fonty tchotchkes for internet pet stores and other terrible ideas. Just one hayride after the next, and only tickling and stalker calling. The hang-up thing. This is annoying. We'd work on it, outside the box. We'd patch it up, squared away. My action item, my best of bread. I met the lunatic, and we did it until it outlived its hipness, until it was Eastern European. We did it until the buildings came down. We did it until the affect was mute, until the recipe got muddled. We did it until I turned into myself and the whole city turned into itself. We did it until the line got too long and therapy turned me down. I'm talking beginning of the decline of our smug empire. I'm talking about inventing a precise posture for the skittering theater of our time. This poem is, I guess my manifesto about lyricism. It's called The Endangered You. Because the you slipped from me like a bead of mercury. Sometimes it was a big you with long gray hair, and other times it was a young man with a curl on his forehead, a vicious girl in a bathtub. It had burrs that made my hands alive with small tears. I kept the you around, hoping someday I would learn how to use it, except I was lazy and I never did. My you, your insistent voice becomes the scrolling windows. I lent it to a friend and she used it a lot more than I did, for letters and speeches. After a while, I would come to her house and the you was a little more frayed than the last time. We pretended for a while that she would be giving it back, but we both knew that it wasn't mine anymore. Sometimes I actually got jealous and wished I had a you, until I remembered how I had had one and neglected it. One day, after a few glasses of wine, I told her I had no need for it and that she should keep it. After a few more glasses, I told her that I did miss it a great deal, and I took it back from her. After that night, she stopped calling me and answering my emails. The U has ridges down its back, divots where water pools in light. I sentimentalized the U because to say you is warming. The U is irrelevant, but still always within reach, because I seldom do things without an audience. When I actually have it in my hands, after leaving it under a pile of bills or laundry, the you looks at me with indifference. The you insists that I engage lightly, and instead I stomp around and wake the whole neighborhood with my boots to let you know what I think of the you's ideas. It's not safe to bandy it around like we're all in on it. We're the opposite of in on it. We're inside and waving our white little flag. There was a time, I think, when people didn't like to be called a liberal. I'm a liberal, by the way. But I just very defiantly called myself a liberal. I think people call themselves progressives during that time. I think they might still do that. I actually like the term bleeding heart liberal. I like the idea of a bleeding heart liberal, which I think actually is even better than being just a liberal. I'd rather be a bleeding heart. I want to see like how much we can escalate it. But at any rate, so this poem is called Bleeding Heart. My heart was bleeding. It bled upward and filled my mouth with salt. It bled because of a city in ruins, the chair still warm from my sister's body, because it would all be irreproducible. My heart is bleeding because of baby bear not finding mama bear, and it bled to the tips of my finger like I painted my nails crimson. Sometimes my heart will bleed so much I'm a raisin. It bleeds until I am a quivering, ragged clot, bleeds at the ending with the heroine in her sunken cancer eyes, at the ending with the plaintive flute over smoke-choked killing fields. I'm bleeding a river of blood right now, and it's wearing a culvert in me for the blood. My heart rises up in me, becomes the cork of me, and I choke on it. I am bleeding for you and for me and for the tiny babies and the IED blown leg. It bleeds because I'm made that way, all filled up with blood. My sloppy heart a sponge filled with blood to squeeze onto any circumstance. Because it is mine, it will always bleed. My heart bled today. It bled onto the streets and the steps of City Hall. It bled in the pizza parlor with the useless jukebox. I've got so much blood to give inside and outside of any milieu. Even for a bad zoning decision, I'll bleed so much, you'll be bleeding. All of us bleeding in and out like it's breathing or kissing, and because it is righteous and terrible and red. This poem is called Pills. Pills. This one softens the soul cartilage. This one makes the red lights green. I have bought enough powder to make a tiny little cartoon cat. Mitsubishi, Batman, Teletubby, Toyota, I love you. I love the earth and forgive it. I love you, guy at the weird apartment playing South Park video games, guy with tennis scholarship, and the guy who has a grandmother who's dying because you all carry. You make me love helicopters and dust. This one makes me throw up, but then I listen to Pink Floyd in the dark without getting scared. This one throws a dark dart at my nemesis, but it's a lame gesture. This one makes my augmentation less brutal. The doctor gives me one that says this might cause sudden death. 250 milligrams versus 500 milligrams. Dry mouth, nausea, dizziness. This one is legal, so it's not that much fun. Take this one with orange juice, consume this one with peanut butter, take this one alone. Don't take this one alone. This one brings the horizon line into your lexicon and you store it for better occasions. Chewing this puts me on a raft on Lake Erie. I'm in the sun, then I'm in the mud baths of Black Rock City getting felt up by a chick with a bone in her nose, then I'm at the top of the hill of my street getting the mail. No business driving. Then I'm alone under the single bulb of self-interrogation. This one makes me near dead, but still pretty. This one makes my friends hate me. This one makes my friends hating me a dull sting, calamine lotion for the brain. If I take this one, then I can bury the undead with a spoon. This one belongs in a Hall of Fame. The last one is not the last one, but feels like New Year's, sanguine, blissful, full of pageantry. I have a lot of ex-friends. I think I have more ex-friends than I actually have friends. And so I wonder about that, like what it is about my person. I'm sure it's their fault, actually. But I think a lot about them. They occupy a lot of my thinking. And so I was thinking about, where a lot of them are, and they've kind of become the ex-friends, this space in me. So this poem is about them. This poem is called Museum of Lost Acquaintance. We'll be erasing the past, so I'll insist on paying. You'll stare at me with brace face and forgive. Whisper that secret name we learned from the movies, I'll forgive you. We'll puppet voices and mugshots. We'll surprise your grandmother's house with paint. Grateful you'll return the sweater you said you lost at the Mormon dance. I'll live under a blanket. We'll wear matching izods to Sadie's dance in French by the trophy case. I'll show you pictures of my dog. We can walk through the mall and pierce our ears. We'll deliver pizzas in a white Corolla. We'll take the bus. Catch a ride with a stranger who strokes my bra strap. You'll ride my handlebars or I on the back of your Vespa. We'll try for summer jobs with the city and not find any. We'll listen to the Doors and pretend it's the 60s. We'll pretend to do drugs and surf. Your dad will drive us to the boardwalk to buy skateboards. You'll reject my boyfriends and I'll reject your girlfriends. We'll pretend to like each other's lovers. We'll pretend to understand poetry and carry notebooks on buses and talk in fake accents. We'll decide to start a Bauhaus tribute band, but quit because we fight over who'll be lead singer. You'll start one behind my back, I behind yours. I'll drive you to your abortion, you to mine. Then sometimes we'll build houses for poor people and be noble. Then we'll be yuppies and have titles at our jobs with 4 words in them, like Asia Pacific Manager of Development for Future Projects Millennium. We'll have another wedding. We'll quit our jobs and go to grad school. I'll major in women's studies, you in labor law. We'll live off the grid. We'll live sort of off the grid and spend too much money on organic marmalade. I'll fuck your boyfriend and you, my brother. I'll stake out your house, read your journal, smell your hair while you sleep. You'll throw all my clothes in Glad bags and we'll have a big dramatic fight like in that perfume commercial. We'll make sex tapes. We'll meet guys online and send them pictures of your sister. We'll buy out-of-date garments and decorate them with spangles and feathers because we want to be pretty. Say nice things we don't mean, bust in on frenemies. Chap our lips from snow, cave into peer pressure. We'll put you in your first suit with a tie from the 80s. Do you know how to give yourself a tattoo? You can give me one too. I will drive you to the mountains and off a cliff and against the trees. Some of it will be true and some of it will test what we know. Some of the things we do will disturb our fragile social circle. We'll escape the fragile social circle for your garage. Some of the time it will be like nights with you when we don't talk for hours until we're facing in bed. Some of it will feel awkward like before we knew what each other's ear looked like close up. You'll go to jail or I for you. We'll both go to pretend jail to lift weights and make shanks from toothbrushes. At times we'll hate so much that it becomes its own living thing. At times I will drive addled for you. At times you'll walk 1,000 stairs. Turn me in, offer me coffee, take me soup, privilege my opinion. You'll teach me soccer like you said you would. I'll take you to Los Angeles to look for Perry Farrell, and you'll claim you saw him and I'll pretend to believe you because that's what it was all about in the first place, the believing part. I'll greet you in the Chinese restaurant where I was pretty and you weren't. You'll greet me in the pool hall where I was fat and you weren't. It'll be conciliatory. We'll feel like we can't talk. We'll take a bath together. We'll move in and away from each other. It'll be like we never happened before. I'm going to read one more poem. It's from another manuscript called Happy Trigger, which is kind of my feminist manifesto. I'm very excited about it. I think I'm more excited about it. It's probably like laughing at your own jokes right now, but I'm pretty excited about it. This one's called Refrain from the Confessions. Take the jar and crack it open. The jar is a plaster cast of my down there. So take that jar to the end of the tunnel. Defile that jar, burn it, tag it, venerate it with dung and sappho. Don't hang my jar over me. It's my jar, it's my jar. Decoupage the jar with mouths cut from Cosmo, Mr. Death. Fill it with our minstrel blood or the placenta from our collective lacunae. Grow lascivious magnolias in it, heavy-lipped and lush with pollen. The jar houses my illusions of eating men like hairballs. Thank you.